I'll sing it now. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Ada for yesterday, happy birthday to you. Now then, let's see what's in the box today. I wonder. Here we go. Oh, I say, would you look at that? Oh, well, I never. A clothes peg. No, it's come to me. It's more than just a clothes peg. This is not just any clothes peg. This, my friends, is a nose peg. Yes, this is a nose peg as worn by Gaboo. Who is Gaboo? The king's servant. Now, don't worry, my friends. I'm not going to wear this the entire time because that might get a little bit annoying. I mean, have you ever spent the day talking to someone who sounds like this the whole time? Hello, how are you? It's not very nice, is it? So, this is a nose peg worn by the king's servant, Gaboo. The king, of course, was called King Barapadapada. I'll tell you more about the king in just a moment. You see, Gaboo had to wear this on his nose because the king smelt so bad. Because he was the very, very stinky king. The king with stinky feet. Are you ready, my friends? Are you steady? And are you a bright pink teddy? Because I'm about to tell you the king with stinky feet. And oh me, oh my, you better hold your nose for the next half hour or so. But don't forget to breathe, please. One quick sip of water. Get ready. Glug, 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 glug. So, once upon a time, there still is, and there always will be a most magnificent river that runs through India. The river, of course, is called the River Ganges, and it is such a beautiful river. It flows through the mountains, it flows over the hills, it flows through the forest, it flows through the jungle, it flows through the fields, and it flows through the meadows. And in one particular part of the river, through one particular meadow, it was so perfect and so beautiful. Either side of the river grew these massive flowers with beautiful smells and beautiful colours and beautiful names like azalea, begonia, chrysanthemum, delphinium. And in amongst the flowers and in amongst the reeds which grew next to the river were all kind of animals. There were frogs. There were birds. There were bees buzzing around, and there were fish in the water. And on the grass that grew right next to the reeds and the flowers were some little crickets. What does a cricket sound like? Oh, I know. They've got little mobile phones, haven't they, crickets? They always sound like they're busy, don't they? Always making lots and lots of phone calls. Haven't they ever heard of texting? Anyway, this was a beautiful river. And overlooking this perfect little beautiful spot of the river was a really beautiful palace. And in the palace, in the toppest tower, in the toppest room of the toppest tower of this beautiful palace, was a king called King Barapadapada. Now that's hard to say, so please let's break it down and we'll all say it together. Ra, ba, da, ba, da. Ba-ra-ba-da-ba-da, 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 ba-ra-ba-da-ba-da. King Ba-ra-ba-da-ba-da. But although his name is jolly, his personality was far from jolly. He was grumpy. He was sulky. He was cantankerous. Now that, my friends, is one of my favourite words. Will you please join me in saying that word? Put your fingers like this. Stick your elbows out. Make a mean and hungry face. And can you please say cantankerous? Oh, well done. I could hear it even without the speaker system. So, he was cantankerous, he was grumpy, he was sulky. And you never ever wanted to be on the bad side of him. Well, the whole side of him was the bad side of him. He didn't actually have a good side. He was so grumpy. He would just throw people into the prison just for the sake of it. If anyone got him angry, you had to be very, very careful not to end up in prison, or worse still, lose your head. Yes, there's nothing worse than walking around without a head. Although it saves on headache pills. Anyway, let me go back to the story. I'll tell you more about the king in just a moment. The story takes place, as I said, in India. And as you may or may not know, parts of India are very hot and can be very dry. And at the time of this story, everyone went around barefoot. Yeah. They didn't mind if a little bit of dust got in between their toes. They didn't mind if their feet got dirty, because they would wash them. They would wash their feet in the morning. They would wash their feet at lunch, and they'd wash their feet at supper time. They'd wash their feet just before they hopped into bed. They would wash them in wooden bowls or china bowls or metal bowls, or they'd wash them in the river. But not King Ba-ra-ba-da-ba-da. He never washed his feet. No, he never washed his face. He never washed his neck. He never washed his hands, and we know how bad that is, especially at the moment. He never took showers, and he never took a bath. Now why, you're asking? Why? Why did he hate water so much? Well, my friends, I'm not entirely sure. But people say that when he was a child, when he was a little boy, he was in the bath and he got some soap in his eye. And it made him cry. Other people say he got tangles in his hair and he said, "That's not fair." Other people say he took his favourite comic to read in the bath and his comic got soggy. Well, my friends, whatever the truth may be, I know it's a little bit foggy, but the fact remains, King Ba-ra-ba-da-ba-da never ever took a bath. And what happens to people who don't take baths? He smelt bad. He smelt awful. He smelt really, really pongy. For instance, his feet stank of stale Stilton. His knees whiffed of fetid fish. His elbows ponged of pickled onions. His armpits reeked of rotten eggs. And his neck niffed of sour milk. But worst of all, his feet. His feet were disgusting. People called him the king with stinky feet. But the king didn't realise how bad he smelt. He had no idea that his feet stank of stale Stilton. He had no idea that his knees whiffed of fetid fish. He had no idea that his elbows ponged of pickled onions. He had no idea that his armpits reeked of rotten eggs. And he had no idea that his neck niffed of sour milk. But everyone else knew that. Oh yes, everyone else. But the king didn't notice this. The king didn't notice that every time he went into a room, people struggled to open up windows, and their skin turned grey and green and pale yellow, and Tommy Tissue Keeper would go around handing out tissues to everyone. And all the ladies of his court would take out their fans and they began to waft wildly. And all the lords took out their little snuff boxes and they began to sniff swiftly. And he didn't realise either that there was this bzzz, this buzzing sound around his head. Bzzz, as a cloud of black flies hovered over him. Bzzz. But the one person who noticed this more than anyone else was poor Gaboo. Poor Gaboo. He didn't know what to do. The king smelt bad. This made Gaboo sad. Poor Gaboo. It was Gaboo's job, for instance, to tidy up after the king, to pick up his clothes, and the king, he was a very messy king as well. He would just drop his clothes all over the place and he had to pick them up. Poor Gaboo. He would pick them up. Sometimes he had to put rubber gloves on to pick these things up. And when the king wasn't in the room, he would take a peg and he would put the peg on his nose like this. But if the king came back and the smell was too bad, he would take 2 little balls of wax and he would push this up his nostrils, which made him talk a little bit like that. Hi, king, I'm so sorry I'm talking like this. I've got a bit of a cold today. Poor Gaboo, he had to change the king's bed. Poor Gaboo had to he had to cut the king's toenails with his own teeth. Oh, poor Gaboo. He didn't know what to do. The king smelt bad. This made Gaboo so sad. Poor Gaboo. And another one of Gaboo's jobs was to chase the flies away. As I said, the king didn't notice the flies, but sometimes the flies would hang around the king's bedroom, and Gaboo, he would see the flies, and his job was to get rid of them. He would say, "Shoo! Shoo, fly! Shoo!" Sometimes he even had to hire the 2 spiders, the 2 court spiders, Cyril and Sybil, to eat all the extra flies. But sometimes they got too full.
"Oh no, Gaboo, thank you very much for that meal, but I can't eat another fly. I'm so sorry."
That was Sybil. No, sorry, that was Cyril. I don't know. They sound quite similar at times. Anyway, one day, it was the day for the king to go around the city. This was the tradition of the place. Once a year only, the king had to leave the palace, walk around the city and inspect the place. It was written in the law. And who was King Barabadabada to argue with that? Apart from being the king, I suppose he could make up his own laws, but he did believe in this sort of tradition. He hated leaving the palace. He hated leaving his room. But he didn't mind so much walking around the city because it made him feel powerful, and it actually made him feel quite scary because when he walked along the streets were just empty, just like that. People would run away from him. They would run into their houses, they would shut the door, they would close the windows and pull the curtains. He thought it was because they were scared of him. What he didn't realise was he smelt so bad that people had to get away from him as fast as he could. Anyway, the day came round and the procession started. The king begrudgingly left his palace. That means he did it in a sort of a not wanting to do it sort of way. Do I have to sort of way? He left the palace and he started walking along the streets with his lords and their snuff boxes, sniffing swiftly, and the ladies with their fans wafting wildly, and Gaboo with 2 balls of wax stuck up his nostrils like this. Well, he got about halfway around the city when guess what? It started to rain. Rain. At first it was just a trickle of rain, and the trickle, turned into a tickle of rain, and the tickle turned into a pickle, and the pickle turned into a puddle, and before he knew it, there was a downpour. Swoosh! "Gaboo," said the king. "Gaboo, make it stop raining right now."
"Me?"
said Gaboo. Or he didn't say that aloud, he thought that.
"Me? Make it stop raining?"
In fact, it was more like,
"Me? Make it stop raining? That's impossible."
But instead he said, "Oh, King, I'll do my best." And luckily, just over there, where you say? Over there. Where? Over there. There was a shop, a dressmaker's shop. It was quite big as well. Most dressmakers in those days had tiny shops, but this was quite a successful emporium. Quickly, the king, the lords and their snuff boxes, the ladies and their fans, and Gaboo with balls of wax up his nose, they ran into the dressmaker's shop. Now, this dressmaker, by the way, whose name is Mildred, she was 103 years old. 103 years old! She'd been a dressmaker pretty well all her life. In fact, all her life. She used to make nappies when she was really young, but now she was a dressmaker. And when you're a dressmaker, sometimes you have what is called a deadline. You have to work around the clock. Yeah, it's difficult. And you have to sew at night. And she was very used to sewing by candlelight, which actually made her eyes a little bit weak. But sometimes, when people start to lose one of their senses, like their eyesight, their other senses improve, like their hearing or their taste or their sense of smell. And the moment King Barapadappada entered the dressmaker's house, dressmaker's shop, "Oh my goodness me! What on earth is that awful pong? Oh, goodness! Oh, that stinks! Oh my word! Oh, it's like a blocked drain! Yeah, a blocked drain! Oh, it's no, it's not a blocked drain. It's worse than that. It's what is it like? It's like a skunk who's been eating too many Brussels sprouts. Yeah, that's what it is. No, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It smells like a nappy. Yeah, a nappy what's been left in a plastic bag in the back of a car with the windows closed on a hot summer's day." Everyone froze. Everyone gulped. Everyone put their hats back on, and if they could have done, everyone would have taken a drink of water. They froze. Sorry, I didn't do. They froze, and slowly their heads turned towards the king, the lords and the ladies and Gaboo. And they could see the king's skin turn grey, then green, then pale yellow, then red. Oh no, the king, the cantankerous king, he's going to be angry, he's going to explode, he's going to be furious. We're all going to end up in prison. That poor dressmaker, she's going to end up without a head on her shoulders. Oh, what are we going to do? The king, he's so angry. He was bright red, and smoke and steam started coming out of his ears. But he just turned to Gaboo, and he said, "Gaboo, Gaboo, let's leave now. We'll go back to the palace." And they solemnly walked all the way back to King Barapadapada's palace. And they walked faster than they'd ever walked before. And even though it was still raining, the king still smelt bad. He still smelt of stale Stilton, of fetid fish, of pickled onions, of rotten eggs, and of sour milk. And the lords still had their snuff boxes, and the ladies still had to waft their fans, and Gaboo still had the balls of wax up his nose. And in spite of the rain, the king's face was bright red. In fact, he was so red and so hot in the face, the rain was turning to steam. Psst, 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 psst. The king went straight upstairs, straight into his room, and he locked the door. He must have had a duck standing around, because I'm sure doors aren't meant to sound like that. But anyway, he locked the door. Poor Gaboo, he didn't know what to do. The king was mad. This made Gaboo sad. Poor Gaboo. Gaboo just waited outside the king's room. His heart, ba-dum, 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 but he'd never seen the king this angry. He'd never seen the king so quiet. He didn't know what to do. He really didn't know what to do. And inside, Gaboo could hear that the king was wandering around the place, muttering to himself. "Oh, what am I going to do? what shall I do? What shall I do? What shall I do? And poor Gaboo, he was getting more and more worried, and his heart was getting louder and louder. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. And finally, at midnight, the king rang his bell. He unlocked the door, stood on another duck, and Gaboo's knees started knocking together. Yes, your majesty, what can I do for you? Gaboo, I've decided something. What, your majesty? Gaboo, I've decided tomorrow I'll take a bath. Oh, yes, thought Gaboo. Oh, fantastic, thought Gaboo. He started doing somersaults up and down the corridor, in his head, of course. Instead, he just looked at the king and said, yes, my lord, I'll prepare absolutely everything. I'll go and get the royal bathroom ready right now. No, Gaboo. I don't want to take a bath in the bathroom. I want to take my bath down there. And he pointed at the river, even though it was midnight. Gaboo knew what he meant. I want to take my bath in the river. Deal with it. Gaboo walked off, smiling, but sort of not knowing what to get ready. The king wasn't actually angry when he went bright red. The king went bright red because he realised something. He realised he really did smell. He realised that his feet stank of stale Stilton. He realised that his knees whiffed of fetid fish. He realised his elbows ponged of pickled onions. He realised his armpits reeked of rotten eggs. And he realised that his neck sniffed of sour milk. But above all, he realised his feet were so stinky that they would probably call him the king with stinky feet. And he went bright red because he was embarrassed. Anyway, all night long, Gaboo got things ready. He started to collect flannels and sponges and soaps and shampoos and shower gels and body oils and he even collected some nice little rubber ducks for the king to play with in the water. And people saw Gaboo doing this and they said, Gaboo, what are you doing? And Gaboo said, you won't believe this, but the king has decided to take a bath. You what? They said, and they started whispering to each other. Hey, do you know what? Pass it on. The king's going to take a bath. No way. The king's going to take a bath. Pass it on. Put it on Twitter. Put it on Facebook. Put it on Instagram. The king's going to take a bath. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, there was a massive crowd of people on both sides of the river. Well, the king walked down from the palace wearing a robe and his brand new swimming trunks. I think they were green and pink, sort of tartany effect. More of a dog tooth effect, I think, yeah. And he wandered over the land like this and got to the river. And his first thought was, I want to turn back. He was actually scared of water. He was terrified, but there were so many people just looking at him like this. It would be too embarrassing for him to go back. So he plucked up all his courage and with a 1, 2, 3, he took a deep breath and he splash jumped into the water. And the moment he touched the water, a big smile filled up his face. Oh, fantastic. Oh, superb. He loved it. He started rolling around in the water. He started putting water into his mouth and squirting it out again, saying, look, I'm a whale, I'm a whale. He started making that sort of weird sort of noise that you do when he put his hand under his armpit. And he took a bar of soap and he started scrubbing himself. And I must say, this horrible grey, greasy slick just floated off like a big fat berg, just floating on the surface of the water. Pretty nasty sight that was. And all the fish, well, they swam away clutching their noses with their little fish fingers like this. But anyway, the king loved it. And by midday, Gaboo said, my lord, are you ready to come out of the water? And he said, no, Gaboo, no, fetch me a picnic. I'll eat by the river. And the king stayed in the water, and Gaboo went to fetch a picnic. He got a cake, of course. Has to be chocolate cake, doesn't it? Little slices of cold pizza, yes, with sweet corn on top, and pineapple, yes, and porridge. A bowl of cornflakes. The king always liked a bowl of cornflakes with his pizza, and some fizzy milk. Fizzy milk? Well, that's milk and lemonade mixed. Well, the king had all this while he's in the water. Then he carried on playing, he carried on swimming. And do you know what? By about 2 o'clock, he began to notice something. He could smell the flowers. He could smell the flowers. He could smell the azaleas. He could smell the begonias. He could smell the chrysanthemums. He could smell the delphiniums. Oh, my goodness me. And he loved that smell. And he looked at his feet. Oh, and his feet were clean. Oh, they were clean. He felt so happy. And he could hear all the animals. He could hear the frogs. He could hear the tweet, tweet, tweet of the birds. He could hear the buzz of the bees. He could hear the... No, not that. The... That's it. Of the fish. And he could hear the... of the little crickets on their mobile phones. He was so happy. And when he got to 4 o'clock, Gaboo said, "Are you ready for your tea?" And he said, "Bring my tea down here, Gaboo." And Gaboo brought some tea and more cake and pancakes this time and little sandwiches with cucumber in. Oh, how sweet. And cream cheese. And the king loved it. He was so happy. But by about 7 o'clock, he looked at his skin and he noticed he looked like a bit of a prune. You know how you're in the bath too long and your skin goes... Well, he looked a bit like that. So... King Barapadappada stepped out of the river. Oh dear. And the moment he did that, the moment his wet foot touched the ground, he could see something. He could see that the dirt and the dust stuck to his foot. Oh, he suddenly got angry. His skin went bright red. "Oh no, my foot is dirty!" And he put it back in the water and, oh, that's better, my feet are clean. Lovely. He put his left foot back on the riverbank, back on the earth. Dirty! He put his foot in the water. Ah, clean. In, clean, out, dirty. In, clean, out, dirty. In, happy, out, angry. "Gaboo!" said the king. "Gaboo! I don't understand. I'm clean, my feet are clean, but the ground is dirty." By now he was getting cantankerous once more. "I want you to do something, Gaboo. I want you to clean the ground. I'm going to give you 3 days, Gaboo. 3 days only to clean the ground. If you do it, well, I'll give you a reward, I suppose. But if you don't do it, I shall chop off your head. Now get to work right now." And in a complete stroppy mood, the king walked all the way back to the palace. Poor Gaboo. He didn't know what to do. The king was mad. This made Gaboo sad. Poor Gaboo. Well, Gaboo then started to think. He stroked his beard. I wonder if something is dirty, you can sweep it clean. So he fetched his broom and he started to sweep the land. And he swept for 1 hour, he swept for 2 hours, he swept for 3 hours, and he realised this is going to take forever. So he asked all of his friends who were at home, if they could take out their brooms. Now, you'll probably find a broom right underneath the seat you are sitting on. Yeah. Or if you're a witch, you might even be sitting on one and know you're sitting on one. So just be careful, because if you take that out, you might fall out of the sky like the acorn in Chicken Licken. Watch this space, that might be coming along. So if you have a broom, you start sweeping. And Gaboo and all his friends, they started sweeping. They swept and they swept and they swept, but they just kept sweeping all night long. And it was dark And they didn't see how much dust they were creating, but they kept sneezing, achoo! And they wondered why they kept sneezing, achoo! They kept sneezing, achoo! Like that. And by the morning, there was this huge cloud over the top of the river, just floating around like that, and bits of dust everywhere. The king looked out of his window in the tower, and he sneezed, achoo! Gaboo! What have you done, Gaboo? I said, clean the ground. I didn't say make a dust storm. You've got 2 days left, Gaboo. 2 days left. Otherwise, no more head for you. Poor Gaboo, he didn't know what to do. The king was mad. This made Gaboo sad. Poor Gaboo. I wonder, thought Gaboo. I wonder. I know. If something's dirty, you can wash it clean. So he fetched a bucket, he fetched a mop, and he fetched a scrubbing brush, and he poured water over the land, and he started to scrub the land to make it clean. 1 hour went by, 2 hours went by, 3 hours went by, and he thought, this is going to take me forever. So he asked all his friends. You'll probably find that bucket on top of the fridge. Just go to the fridge quickly, bring back the bucket of water. The scrubbing brush, I think it's under the sink. Get that, and start to scrub the ground with me. He scrubbed and he scrubbed, Gaboo scrubbed and he scrubbed, and all his friends scrubbed and he scrubbed, and they scrubbed all night, and they couldn't see what they were doing because it was night time, and by morning there was mud everywhere. Gaboo and his friends were sliding around and squirming in the mud like greasy hippos. The king looked out of his window, and all he could see was a swamp. Gaboo, what have you done? I said, clean the ground. I said, don't make a mudslide. What are you doing? You've got 1 day left, Gaboo, or no more head for you. Clean the ground right now. Oh, poor Gaboo, he didn't know what to do. The king was mad. This made Gaboo sad. Poor Gaboo. I wonder, thought Gaboo. Then he had a brilliant idea. I know, if something's dirty, if something's muddy, if something's dusty, if I can't clean it, I'll cover it up. So he took little bits of fabric, like this, and he started stitching them together. Old towels, old bits of clothing, old flannels, any bits of fabric he could find underneath the sofa, you know, where you keep your bits of fabric. And then he realised, this is going to take me forever. So he asked all his friends, all of you out there, I'm sure you got bits of fabric. What about those curtains? You don't want those curtains anymore. Stitch them together, that's it. Stitch the curtains to your Auntie Ethel's headscarf. That'll do, yeah. Anyway, by morning, there was this weird and wonky patchwork of all the colours of the rainbow, all stitched together in varying degrees of stitching, some neat, some a little bit scruffy. But there it was, the ground was covered. The king looked out his window, and again he smiled. My goodness me, Gaboo. I think you've done a rather good job. Well, this was a first for Gaboo. He had never once been congratulated by King Barabadabada. King Barabadabada hurried down in his new black and white zigzag trunks, and he walked across the fabric. And the king smiled again, because he loved the feel of the fabric beneath his feet. He walked up to the river's edge, he looked in the water, and with 1, 2, 3, splash, he jumped into the water, and straight away there was the smile, and he rolled around. Look, I'm a whale! Look! He got the soap, he scrubbed himself, he played with the ducks. He absolutely loved it. He loved it! Until he noticed something. He noticed something was different. He noticed something was strange. He noticed something was wrong. You see, he couldn't smell the flowers anymore. He couldn't smell the azaleas, the begonias, the chrysanthemums, the delphiniums. And do you know what? He couldn't hear the of the frogs. He couldn't hear the tweet, tweet, tweet of the birds. He couldn't hear the bzzz of the bees. He couldn't hear the of the fish, and he couldn't hear the of the crickets. Because the land had been covered up, there were no smells and no sounds anymore. Oh, Gaboo, what have we done? Typical, thought Gaboo. Typical. We? There's no we about this. He didn't say that out loud. He said it in his head. What are we going to do, Gaboo? Think, Gaboo, think. And then Gaboo, whenever Gaboo's thinking, he strokes his beard and he looks at the floor and he says, I wonder. And he started walking around at this stroke in his beard, I wonder. And at that very moment, Mildred was on her way back from the market. Mildred had bought herself an expensive and very, very sharp pair of scissors. And remember, her eyesight is really, really bad.
La-di-da-di-da, look at my scissors. Oh, I know it's really dangerous to carry scissors like this, but look at them, they're so sharp. La-di-da-di-da.
Gaboo, I wonder.
La-di-da-di-da, snip, snip, snip. La-di-da.
I wonder. La-di-da. Bang! Mildred, the dressmaker, who was 103 years old, with bad eyesight, bumped into Gaboo. Just like that. Just like that. Bump, bump, bumpity bump. Oh, I'm sorry, said Mildred. Sorry. I'm sorry, said Mildred. Oh, apologise. Don't apologise to me. Apologies from me, is what I was trying to say just then, said Gaboo. I'm so sorry, but hang on. Aren't you Mildred, the 103-year-old dressmaker who said that the king smelt bad? Oh, my, was that the king? Oh, dearie me, my bad. Well, don't worry about that. If you hadn't said the king smelt bad, well, he'd still be dirty. Yeah, he'd be really stinky. But thanks to you, he's having a bath in the river. But we have a problem. He really likes to be clean. He doesn't like to get his feet dirty. And he loves the feel of the fabric beneath his feet. But he wants to smell the flowers and he wants to hear the animals. And when the land is covered up like this, he can't hear a thing, he can't smell a thing. I don't know what to do. Oh, my goodness me. The answer to that is so simple. Look, just do what I say. King, just step out the water, will you, King? Come on, don't be shy. Step out the water. Well, the king came out the water. He'd never been talked to like this by a little old lady, and he really didn't know how to respond to it. The king got out the water, and he stood with his legs apart like this, on the fabric. Mildred took her extra sharp scissors and cut circles around his feet. Big circles. It was almost like the king was standing on two bits of patchwork pizzas. Mildred and Gaboo removed all the other fabric from the land, and straight away you could hear the crickets and the frogs. I was about to say, bah, why not? Frogs, bah, doing that. And straight away he could smell the flowers. But there's the king still standing on the two fabric pizzas like this with his legs akimbo. That means slightly apart. What's going on, thought the king. What's going on? Hold on, dear, hold on, said Mildred. She took a needle and thread, which she always carried about her person, and she started stitching around the top of the circles of fabric, making something called a drawstring. She pulled that in, and the fabric tightened up around the king's feet. The king looked down at his feet, and Mildred said, "Now, go on, walk about, go on, don't be shy." The king took one step, and then another step, and he thought this was incredible. My goodness me, my dear lady, you've invented something amazing. What do you call these things? Well, at that particular moment, Gaboo was just a little bit further away from the king and Mildred, because a fly was bothering him. A fly was buzzing around Gaboo's head, not the king's head this time, but Gaboo's head. Bzzz. That's a different type of buzz, by the way, than the bees. The bees are more sort of buzz like that, different pitch. And the fly was going buzz like that, and Gaboo was saying, "Shoo, shoo, shoo." And the king heard this and he said, "Shoo, shoo, shoo. What a fantastic name. Shoo, shoo, shoo. But let's just shorten it. Let's just call it Shoes." "Oh, that sounds good to me," said Mildred. "Yeah, let's call them Shoes." Well, the king rewarded Mildred, the 103-year-old dressmaker, for her fantastic invention. He rewarded Gaboo for all his hard service and all his long service, and apologised to Gaboo for all that horrible cantankerousness that he had ever given him. He let all the people out of prison who only went to prison because the king was being grumpy. And from that day on, the king was never dirty, the king was always clean, and the king was never ever stinky. But if he hadn't been stinky in the first place, we'd still all be walking around barefoot. Thank you very much, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please contact me. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. Please look after each other. And TTFN, see you tomorrow.